Today, October 5th, and we're gonna finish our story, The Lottery, here in just a moment. Let's see, we do visit the book fair tomorrow. Bring monies with you if you're wanting to buy things. Yes, they have toys, because apparently kids like to buy toys. They also have books, but apparently kids like toys more than books. If you go tomorrow and then realize there is a thing you want, but if you did not bring monies, you can go back on Friday after the test. And then that is fine with me. Finish the test and be like, I want to spend monies, and then I can send you over there. Your long blue story. For you guys, it's the necklace, and then for my regular kids, it's hey, you down there. Read story for tomorrow. So here's why you want to read it for tomorrow. In theory, kids had questions about last week's story, the one that you guys had to read on your own for quiz, and I didn't get to talk about it. So this week, my goal is to take time tomorrow to answer questions. So if there are things that bother you, disturb you, confuse you in story, if you've read it, I can answer those questions for you tomorrow. If you've not read it, I can't answer those questions for you, because I will go, what questions do you have? And you'll go, blink, 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 and I'll go, moving on, and you'll go, blink, blink, and then it won't do you any good at all. So that's just to try and help you from there. And then I'll try to give you guys some test practice questions tomorrow to try and help you as we go further from there. And your retakes, I will be grading tomorrow. If you have submitted them, go you. I've not looked at them yet. That is a tomorrow issue. What?
This is kind of a random question, but who has had the highest B points?
That's literally why there's a poster.
Alex.
And for you guys, this is just my way of letting you know. Make sure you read the thing for Friday's test and for tomorrow's conversation, just to help you out from there. And if you want to do the assessment fixing, again, just reminding you, linky. I also sent it out yesterday on Remind. You can find it on Canvas. It's completely up to you. And then, other than that, follow the directions and you should be good to go. No questions as far as the assessment goes. No questions as far as your blueberry flavored story goes.
Blueberries.
Then what?
It's going to be dead blueberries.
That was the old story. This one's about bananas.
Blueberry.
So then about our banana story, as opposed to the blueberry story. There's so many different fruits in the world.
Oh, blue and ice.
I did not know I was making it that tricky. I apologize. I was literally going off the colors of the papers.
Oh. What, a pineapple yellow?
Wow.
Lemon. Yeah, what's pineapple?
Sure. If you want to go with lemon,
What
that's
about
fine.
like one of those yellow apple coconut?
Lemon meringue. What about that moon up there?
Oh, it's definitely the moon.
They're going to be such a moon.
Maybe it's cheese. No, it's gold. What's happening?
I'm trying to move forward to get to my clipboard.
Just
My
stand up.
I think we
Stand
started
up. Hold a chair.
Standing up is hard.
So again, traditions. The tradition you guys have of every day attacking each other, apparently. My tradition of looking around to see which kids have banana flavored papers, and your guys' tradition of doing the weird flappy paper thing. And the good thing about traditions is they can stop at any moment, and we can just stop having a tradition. Anyway, traditions. We're going to come back to that conversation in a moment. And then again, suspense. We finished your exposition yesterday, so we can do nothing but rising action all the way to the very end. And we're going to end with climax in a moment, where we find out nothing happens in the story and the whole thing was a big trick and they just wake up. And then, let's see, we got to the rising action. Foreshadowing. Speaking of which, do you have things that you think is foreshadowing yet in story? Or
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Cora?
Mr. Brovicast. I think that's foreshadowing when he said like they really want like men over the age of like 18 to do it. I think that's foreshadowing.
I can see that. Any idea what that foreshadows?
Maybe that like they need to like pick people to like fight or something.
Ooh, I do like fighting. Noah?
I think the guy's named Mr. Graves still because he digs graves, and because they're going to war. Yeah.
That was a bit of a reach, but okay. Gussie?
So, I think it has something to do like the box down like LaCroix in there or something, because or like the Delacroix guy. If you took out the D and the E, it'd just be LaCroix.
That's really smart, guys. I agree.
Bryce Lee?
So it said when the man volunteered for his mom that he was brave, so I think it's something bad because like they don't know that, but then it's gonna be something bad.
I can see that. I had not thought about the brave thing. Jimmy to the jam?
I think they're not drafting for the Army because on the second page, it says, a tall boy in the crowd raised his hand here, and he said, I'm drawing for my mother and me, and I don't know.
Interesting.
Usually,
We will come back to that
Usually you
in a
don't get to
moment.
volunteer other people.
Yeah.
So what you're saying, Jimmy Jam, is women should not be allowed in the army.
no, that's not what I'm
Jimmy
saying.
Jam, that was a
Jimmy
Attack him, not me. Attack him.
I didn't say that. I'm saying like they
I
usually
agree.
don't draw for other people.
I agree on that one. Jada.
I not really agree with Jimmy Jam, but because that's so mean.
Yes, women deserve to be killed too. I'm with you, Jada.
Bro, what?
Wow.
Those are the two choices, right?
I also think they're
Jada?
not voting for like money or anything. I think they're getting like voted off for who's going to like end in this. Like if they're gonna die or get like kicked out because like their whole family.
Oh, so we're gonna banish the family?
Yeah.
That's why it's such a small league.
Right.
Okay, so the winner of the lottery is going to hold the lottery next year. And then the winner of that lottery is going to hold it next year.
No,
So the whole point is that,
tradition.
Yeah.
didn't it say that Mr. Graves does it every year?
Yes.
Oh, maybe
But
he
it was a
will.
good try.
It's someday.
Cora, then I get to move on.
Miss Brovicast. So I think to add on to what Jada said, I think it kind of is like that, but like whatever family like actually wins the lottery, they have to like Jada said, they have to like leave, or it's like to keep the population small. So they like, I don't want to say they have to kill the family off. But, like,
My
they
only-
get rid of them.
Torture town.
Only argument about the small town thing is at the very first paragraph.
I know they talked about like how it grew a lot and stuff, but maybe it's to like keep it from growing to like a lot.
And other towns did.
So they talk about other towns where it takes 2 days because other towns are so big.
Well,
I'm not saying you're wrong. I
Hunger
just,
Games universe.
again, we're going to find out they wake up and it was a dream, so it doesn't matter anyway.
Really? What?
Yeah, he's going to think that we're not going to supposed to believe that.
So, as we go through it, let's see, when is our story taking place?
June 27th.
June 27th. What time of day?
Sunday morning.
Morning time. Where is it taking place?
Village.
Small town.
Not that big, because that's Noblesville, but they only have how many people in their town?
372.
Definitely not that large. It's bigger than the 300 people.
372.
Then,
Oh.
right, then we have the 300, and then we get, oh, how long has the town been doing the lottery? Longer than Old Man Warner, so forever and ever and ever. And then, has the lottery changed over the years? A ton. Why are they still doing the lottery? The tradition thing comes in. And then, oh, what do they use for the lottery?
And a big
There you go. Then, what goes in the box?
The mystery.
used to be wood chips.
Question mark.
Used to be the wood chips, and then we eventually smashed the wood chips and made it paper because our town is humongous. It's 300 people.
Isn't there a bunch of kids in the school?
Not so many people are having lunch. We have like 900 some kids, almost 1,000 in the school.
Let's team up all lunch for.
So then we have, oh, and the kids, they were playing with rocks
Why is
earlier.
there like, why is there a bunch of rocks in the picture?
Because I was making fun of the kids who were playing with rocks, and I
Why is
had,
it just like rubble against buildings?
They probably don't have phones or anything.
if I put little tiny rocks, you couldn't see what it was and be like, Mr. Brovicast, are those piles of dog poop?
Medium-sized rocks.
Or you could not be haters. That's also an option. I mean, not for this class, but for other classes. All right, so we left off with you guys. Oh, we found out. See, Tessie comes running up. That's my Tessie who came running up at the end. And then we're going to, we're finding out. Let's see. Not everyone gets to draw. So that was the part we were going through.
It's the
Yes.
part.
Wyland,
We're at the part at like the very bottom.
where it says, well, Mr.
At
Summers.
noon.
I know. I've got it marked on.
Right?
I'm a professional.
Noon?
That's the thing.
Where?
At the bottom where it says, well, Mr. Summers said.
Wow.
Yeah, because you got to turn the paper over.
No.
And then go to the left. And then go, oh my God, it's right there.
About it.
Okay.
Oopsies.
Let's see. We had Tall Boy, that was the kid coming forward. Good fellow Jack. Well, Mr. Summerson, I guess that's everyone. Ah, did Old Man Warner make it? Here, a voice said. Mr. Summers nodded. By the way, I feel I nailed my Old Man Warner voice. A sudden hush fell on the crowd as Mr. Summers cleared his throat and looked at the list. Alrighty, now I'm going to read the names, heads of families first, and the men come up and take a paper out of the box. Keep the paper folded in your hand without looking at it until everyone has had a turn. Okay, everything clear? So to make sure everything's clear for you guys, not everyone gets to go up and play the lottery. The only people who play are the men. Now, women get to play on some occasions. When do women get to play?
When they're husbands
If
can't
there's
make
no
it.
man. Is it sexist?
Yes.
Yes. But we're going to find out there's actually a reason for their sexism coming up in a moment. So it's not just sexism for the fun of sexism. There actually is a reason for it. So yeah, so now we're going to have each male come up and draw from it. Or at least the male in each family. The people had done this so many times that they only half listened to the directions. Most of them were quiet, wetting their lips and not looking around. And then Mr. Summers raised one hand high and said, "Adams!" The man disengaged himself from the crowd and came forward. "Hi, Steve," Mr. Summers said. Mr. Adams said, "Hi, Joe." They grinned at one another humorlessly, nervously. Then Mr. Adams reached into the black box and took out a folded paper. He held it firmly by one corner as he turned and went hastily back to his place in the crowd, where he stood a little apart from his family, not looking down at his hand. "Allen! Anderson! Bentham! Seems like there's no time at all between lotteries anymore," Mrs. Delacroix said to Mrs. Graves in the back row. "I know. It seems like we got through with the last one only last week. Time sure goes fast." "Clark! Delacroix! There goes my old man," Mrs. Delacroix said, and she held her breath while her husband went forward. "Dunbar!" Mr. Summers said, and Mrs. Dunbar went steadily to the box, while one of the women said, "Go on, Janie," and another said, "Yeah, there she goes." "We're next," Mrs. Graves said. She watched while Mr. Graves came around from the side of the box, greeted Mr. Summers gravely, and selected a slip of paper from the box. By now, all through the crowd, there were men holding the small folded papers in their large hands, turning them over and over nervously. Mrs. Dunbar and her two sons stood together, Mrs. Dunbar holding the slip of paper. "Harbert? Hutchinson? Get up there, Bill," Mrs. Hutchinson said, and the people near her laughed. "Jones! I do say," Mr. Adams said to Old Man Warner, who stood next to him, "that over in the North Village, they're talking of giving up the lottery." Old Man Warner snorted. "Yeah, pack of crazy fools, listening to the young folks. Nothing's good enough for them. Next thing you know, they'll be wanting to go back to living in caves and nobody work anymore and live that way for a while. I mean, there used to be a saying about lottery in June, corn be heavy soon. First thing you know, we'd all be eating stewed chickweed and acorns. There's always been a lottery," he added petulantly. "Bad enough to see young Joe Summers up there joking with everybody." "Some places have already quit lotteries," Mrs. Adams said. "Ha! Nothing but trouble in that," Old Man Warner said stoutly. "Pack of young fools! Martin!" And Bobby Martin watched his father go forward. "Overdyke! Percy!" "Oh, I wish they'd hurry," Mrs. Dunbar said to her older son. "I wish they'd hurry. They're almost through." "You get ready to run tell Dad," Mrs. Dunbar said. Mr. Summers called his own name and then stepped forward precisely and selected a slip from the box. Then he called, "Warner! 77th year I've been in the lottery," Old Man Warner said as he went through the crowd. 77th time.
He's gonna die.
"What? Watson!" The tall boy came awkwardly through the crowd. Someone said, "Don't be nervous, Jack." And Mr. Summers said, "Take your time, son." "Zanini!" After that, there was a long pause, a breathless pause, until Mr. Summers, holding his slip of paper in the air, said, "All right, fellas." For a moment, no one moved. And then all the slips of paper were opened. Suddenly, all the women began to speak at once, saying, "Who is it? Who's got it? Is it the Dunbars? Is it the Watsons?" Then the voices began to say, "It's Hutchinson. It's Bill. Bill Hutchinson's got it." "Go tell your father," Mrs. Dunbar said to her older son. People began to look around to see the Hutchinsons. Bill Hutchinson was standing quietly, staring down at the paper in his hand. Suddenly, Tessie Hutchinson shouted to Mr. Summers, "You didn't give him time enough to take any paper he wanted. I saw you. It wasn't fair."
No.
There's more. It's just on this page.
I want to flip my desk over.
Everyone wants to flip their desk over. So far, we found out what's on most of the papers, which is nothing, except for one paper, which has the winning stuff on it. We just don't know what the winning stuff is yet. Now, I have a copy of it here. You just don't get to know what it is yet. So, we do find out which family won. Which family won?
One. Don't actually. Oh my God! Don't actually.
He's gonna knock the stand over.
Which would be the Hutchinsons. And how does the Hutchinson family react to this wonderful news?
Negatively.
So, what does that tell you?
It's bad.
So, do we have guesses as to what it's going to be? Jada?
They're gonna die. They're all gonna die.
The whole family?
Yes.
You seem so happy. Senka?
I think they all have to become farmers.
Oh, what makes you think farmers?
It said lottery and whatever.
Lottery in June, corn be heavy soon. Alright. They still right. No.
Become the corn.
Corn.
This is really dark.
Okay.
But what if the family becomes like the fertilizer for the corn?
Oh
my God!
I'm sorry.
Would be dark because fertilizer is dark colored. I'm with you. So that would be the same. So what we're going to find out now is that the Hutchinson, Tessie, family won, but the family does not win. Only one person in the family gets to win.
They play rock, paper, scissors.
Ah.
The guy died.
So that'll be this next part coming up, which I will put the words up there for you in a second. Right there. But this will be the next picture that we're going to have popping up here in a moment. Because they have to figure out the next part. So this next part, as we go through and do the reedy bits, your goal is to figure out the second lottery. Because they're getting ready to do lottery part 2.
The family lottery.
Alright. I'm going to back up to list a little bit where it says, "Suddenly, Tessie Hutchinson shouted to Mr. Summers, 'You didn't give him time enough to take any paper he wanted. I saw you. It wasn't fair.' 'Be a good sport, Tessie,' Mrs. Delacroix called. And Mrs. Graves said, 'All of us took the same chance.' 'Shut up, Tessie,' Bill Hutchinson said. That would be her husband. 'Well, everyone,' Mr. Summers said, 'that was done pretty fast. Now we've got to be hurrying a little more to be done in time.' He consulted his next list. 'Bill, you drew for the Hutchinson family. You got any other households in the Hutchinsons?' 'There's Dawn and Eva,' Mrs. Hutchinson yelled. 'Make them take their chance.' 'Daughters draw with their husbands' families, Tessie,' Mr. Summers said gently. 'You know that as well as anyone else.' 'It wasn't fair.' 'Yeah, I guess not, Joe,' Bill Hutchinson said regretfully. 'My daughter draws with her husband's family. That's only fair. I've got no other family except the kids.' 'Then as far as drawing for families is concerned, that's you,' Mr. Summers said in explanation. 'And as far as drawing for households is concerned, that's you too, right?' 'Right. How many kids, Bill?' Mr. Summers asked formally. 3. Bill Jr., Nancy, and then little Davy, and Tessie and me.' 'All right then,' Mr. Summers said. 'Harry, did you get their tickets back?' Mr. Graves nodded and held up the slips of paper. 'Put them in the box then,' Mr. Summers directed. 'Take Bill's and put that one in.' 'I think we ought to start over,' she said as quietly as she could. 'I'm telling you, it wasn't fair. You didn't give them time enough to choose. Everybody saw that.' So, lottery part 2. What's happening in part 2?
Family lottery.
So what are we trying to figure out?
Which one?
Not that far yet.
Which one gets turned into fertilizer?
which one wins.
No, they don't.
So we're figuring out which one wins, and we have 5 people in the family.
Dad.
Tessie, the dad who draw the winning ticket, and then we have the 3 kids. Bill Jr., Nancy, and
Little Davey.
Little Davey. So I did my best to try and help you out with that. So they're trying to figure out who wins
That's
next.
the wife. No wonder she's
Like
married.
a chart of Little Dave.
Little Davey could win.
I don't know what the little baby.
You
Alright.
search clip art of Little Dave.
Mr. Graves had selected the 5 slips and put them in the box, and he dropped all the papers but those onto the ground, where the breeze caught them and lifted them off. "Listen, everybody," Mrs. Hutchinson was saying to the people around her. "Are you ready, Bill?" Mr. Summers asked, and Bill Hutchinson, with one quick glance around at his wife and children, nodded. "All right, remember, take the slips, keep them folded until each person has taken one. Harry, you better help little Dave." Mr. Graves took the hand of the little boy who came willingly with him up to the box. "Take a paper out of the box, Davy," Mr. Summers said. Davy put his hand into the box and laughed. No, take just one paper. Harry, you better hold it for him." Mr. Graves took the child's hand and removed the folded paper from the tight fist and held it while little Dave stood next to him and looked up at him wonderingly. "Nancy next," Mr. Summers said. Nancy was 12, and her school friends breathed heavily as she went forward, switching her skirt, and took a slip daintily from the box. "Bill Jr.," Mr. Summers said, and Billy, his face red and his feet over-large, nearly knocked the box over as he got the paper out. "Tessie," Mr. Summers said. She hesitated for a minute, looking around defiantly, and then set her lips and went up to the box. She snatched a paper out and held it behind her. "I'm have you sit over there for now. Just put that paper there. We thought you were dead, so we had to replace you with a new Alec." "Bill," Mr. Summers said, and Bill Hutchinson reached into the box and felt around, bringing his hand out at last with the slip of paper in it. The crowd was quiet. A girl whispered, "I hope it's not Nancy," and the sound of the whisper reached the edges of the crowd. "Not the way it used to be," Old Man Warner said clearly. "People just ain't the way they used to be." "All right," Mr. Summers said. "Open the papers. Harry, you open little Davy's." Mr. Graves opened the slip of paper. There was a general sigh through the crowd as he held it up. Everyone could see that it was blank. Nancy and Bill Jr. opened theirs at the same time, and both beamed and laughed, turning around to the crowd and holding their slips of paper above their heads. So who's left?
The parents.
One of the 2 of them is about to win. So, has there been more foreshadowing?
I don't know.
Is the prize going to be good or bad?
Bad.
Starting to pick up on the foreshadowing. "Tessie," Mr. Summers said. There was a pause, and then Mr. Summers looked at Bill Hutchinson. Bill unfolded his paper and showed it. It was blank. "It's Tessie," Mr. Summers said, and his voice was hushed. "Show us her paper, Bill." Bill Hutchinson went over to his wife and forced the slip of paper out of her hand. It had the black spot on it. The black spot Mr. Summers had made the night before with a heavy pencil in the coal company office. Bill Hutchinson held it up, and there was a stir in the crowd. "All right, folks," Mr. Summers said. "Let's finish quickly." Although the villagers had forgotten the ritual and lost the original black box, they still remembered to use stones. The pile of stones the boys had made earlier was ready, and there were stones on the ground with the glowing scraps of paper that had come out of the box. Mrs. Delacroix selected a stone so large she had to pick it up with both hands and turned to Mrs. Dunbar. "Come on," she said. "Hurry up!" Mrs. Dunbar had small stones in both hands, and she said, gasping for breath, "I can't run at all. You'll have to go ahead. I'll catch up with you." The children had stones already, and someone even gave little Davy Hutchinson a few pebbles. Tessie Hutchinson was in the center of the cleared space by now. She held her hands out desperately as the villagers moved in on her. "It isn't fair," she said. A stone hit her on the side of the head. Old Man Warner was saying, Come on, everyone! Steve Adams was in the front of the crowd of villagers with Mrs. Graves beside him. "It isn't fair! It isn't right!" Mrs. Hutchinson screamed, and then they were upon her.
Did they stop her to death? Did they stop her to death?
And that's where the story ends.
Why?
Two things for you. One, if you need to see end of story, I have the actual full story on there for you to download. Two, we find out Tessie was the winner. What does Tessie win?
Death.
Death by
Stones.
Nicely done.
Why do they do that?
Now, that's our next
Bloody,
thing.
why don't the stones too?
What's
Why
it
not?
called? So,
Yeah,
that brings us to this.
It's tradition.
So, that's the first part of it. Our conversation from yesterday was
why?
tradition. Now, that's the other part of it. Now, here's where I tell you, this is based on a true story.
Wait, what?
A true story here in America.
Wait, what?
And it's a true story here in America. That is still going on.
Wait, what?
So, do you feel that emotion you are feeling right now? That is why the author wrote this story, was to bring attention to it. Now, allow me to explain a thing to you, and you're going to have that small learning moment. With story, why is it they keep doing this?
Tradition.
Do they care why they do it?
No.
It's just the fact that it's been, how long have they been doing it?
Forever.
So it's just part of what they do, and it's been going on forever. Does everyone do it?
No.
Because some places have stopped doing it.
It's more civilized.
But what is it that the people, or what do the old people feel about them stopping it?
They're
just
not
young
good.
There you go. Now, here's where you're going to have to use your imagination for a moment, because this story was written in the 1960s. And she was afraid if she wrote a very obvious story, then people would not read it. So she had to sort of mask things a little bit. But I think with just a small imagination, you will quickly see what she was referring to. In there, beginning of the story, all the people are the same. What was the only thing that made Tessie's thing different than everyone else's?
Black dot.
The little black dot. Other than that, all the people were the same. And that little black dot was the only thing that separated her from everybody else. So now's where you take your imagination. Take that black dot and expand it so it covers the paper. Now expand it so it goes onto the skin. Now expand it so it goes from the skin and covers the entire body. What was she writing about? Racism. Because when you think about racism, you're not born racist. Where does racism come from?
It's taught your parents.
Taught by your parents. Where do they learn it from?
Their parents.
So what is racism a form of?
Tradition.
It is a form of tradition. It is a thing that gets passed down. Now, that moment where you had that revolting thought of why would they do such things, how is that any different than homophobia or racism or anything like that? All of these people are the same. The only thing that made the difference was one small, insignificant thing that made that one person different. Did everyone turn against her?
Yes.
Absolutely. Was she against the lottery at the beginning?
Yes. No.
No, she was all for it, which is what you see a lot of times.
It wasn't fair. Wait.
It wasn't fair until what?
It was happened to her.
Until it happens to her, which is what happens in society, where people are like, yeah, it's fine, until all of a sudden it happens to you, and then all of a sudden it is no longer fair. Whether it is racism, or whether it is homophobia, or whether it's any kind of hatred that is out there, there's the idea of challenging, why do you hate other people? Is there a reason behind it, or is it a thing that has simply been passed down to you? Here's where I get to go on a small side note for a second.
You've destroyed my brain.
I should probably wrap up the video now. Sorry, the video cut out for a second. That was weird. I have no idea why it just suddenly stopped recording. These things just happen. But anyway, make sure that you are ready for the book fair tomorrow, and then we're going to have tests coming up on Friday, and then we just had a bonding moment, and then I realized that oddly, for some reason, the video had stopped. So, you know, life.